Okay. Welcome to the latest edition of the LFC Delaware podcast. We are delighted to have Craig Hannon and Neil Atkinson from the Anfield Wrap joining us. We were almost kind of together in person at the end of March, but obviously world events overtook us, and I guess as a backup here, we have them here today to talk about a bunch of things, how the Anfield Wrap got going, their experience as fans, and maybe share some stuff about our own experience, supporter experience here in the US. And of course, we'll finish off with kind of the old favorites in terms of what we've been reading on our Facebook posts this week. Before we get started, just a couple of quick announcements. If you are in Delaware and you're looking to watch next week's Everton game, we've got a couple of options. One is we've got an outdoor projector set up, which we'll be able to show the game on. Capacity will be limited, so if you want to know more about that, send us a message at lfcdelaware@gmail.com. The bar also will be open. We're waiting for kind of final instructions around that, but you will definitely need a reservation, and social distancing and masks will be obligatory as part of that. But the bar is open, so the restaurant is open, the bar is not. So there is an opportunity to watch, but not quite in the way that we usually do. So what else? Oh, quick shout out for Charlie, quick shout out for koozies, which are moving along very nicely, but we still have quite a few left.
Beautiful. Not only keep your beer cool,
and your hand
keep
warm.
your hand from being too cool.
Yes. So yes, Delaware's very own the special item. I keep saying you can actually order these directly off the Anfield shop, but you have to buy them in batches of 200. So that might be a bit off-putting. So you can get them in 4s from us. Seriously, it is on the Anfield shop. You can buy 200. Okay. Didn't want to, before we get started, just want to say a few things. We had Hytham on from Chicago last week when we talked about Black Lives Matter. A couple of things we want to keep that conversation going. One thing would kind of suggest you go do is go look at LFC DC's Twitter account. That LFC DC, Washington DC, obviously. They put out a really cool statement today. So go take a look at that. At the very least, like it, and we'll be sharing our own version of that message, hopefully in the upcoming week. And Sean, you had a couple of other people that you would kind of recommend that people go take a look at their work.
Yeah, there was just as a part. If you read the LCDC statement at the end, they have a few people to follow on social media, and so I was just going to mention a few people that I started following. The first is Philip Atiba Goff, and I think you can follow him on Facebook, definitely on Twitter. He's the head of the Center for Policing Equity, and he's from Philadelphia. So he's testified before Congress on the topic, and super knowledgeable guy. He's on TV some these days. And then the other guy's Michael Harriet, who's a journalist for The Root, and a lot of interesting things. There's one series of tweets that I read of his from last year on sort of post-Civil War Reconstruction era, and events kind of surrounding that. So just two other names to mention. I think their intent was to help people kind of educate themselves on some of the topics if they're not aware. So anyway, yeah.
Great, thanks, Sean. So well, moving on to I guess I say this way too much, but the most important of the least important things. We're going to delve into a few different things here, but first of all, I really would like to get Neil and Craig's stories about their kind of earliest Liverpool memories. It's something we've had fun with so far. So,
well, mine is I'm my first game from 86, the running of the 85-86 season. I was 5.5, and we went to see Liverpool play Birmingham City at Anfield. There's only about 4 games till the end of the season, although my sort of recollection of this is up in the air. But I went with my dad, and Liverpool beat Birmingham 5-0. And they went on and they beat Everton 3-1 in the cup final. And But they beat I think that kit is behind you, the 85-86 one. I think that is, yeah. A few couple winners I can see there. And they beat Birmingham 5-0, and it was Gary Gillespie hat trick of all things from centre half. And I've never seen the video back. I've never seen the goals back, but I can remember a couple of the goals. He takes a penalty for the fifth, so Liverpool are 4-0 up, and it's Liverpool get a penalty with 5 minutes to go. And so the cop calls for Gillespie to take it. And I remember Kenny's on the pitch, like, calls Gillespie forward to take this penalty, which he slots, and he gets his hat trick. And that was my first game. And if it was spool forward about sort of, let's say, 30 years, and when I was in about 2014, I was asked by 8x8 to the football magazine in the US to act as a stringer. Someone had done a piece, but they needed to get a bit more out of Gary Gillespie. So I went up to Southport from Liverpool city centre, where I then lived. And I went up to Southport, and I went to Gary's house, being given the address. I went in through the front door, and the first thing you see on the right-hand side as you walk in is the match ball from that game, which has been signed by all the players. And I nearly had an existential crisis. Like, here's the match ball from my first game. Like, I was nearly in tears. Gary, who, by the way, thinks he's just got some lad coming in to do an interview that's going to take 5 minutes, wonders why he's got this person who's just frozen, like absolutely frozen and staring at this ball with intent. I was just like, I was absolutely overwhelmed by it. It was like I was Don Draper in an episode of Mad Men. A full-on breakdown, and Gary couldn't have been nicer, and we did the interview, and he drove us back into town. But I want to play the long game and see if I can get him to bequeath me that ball, and he will, to be quite honest with you. But you never know. We'll see how it goes. That's my first memory.
Seems a reasonable request.
Mm-hmm.
My one, my mum's side of her family are United fans, United season ticket holders. Go to all the games, been to all the European Cups. And so my early memories of being a Liverpool fan was going round to their house and almost like being made to feel like the black sheep in the family. Like, there was constant, why have you let this happen? They'd be saying this to my mum. And the reason I got a Liverpool shirt in the first instance, I was 4, and my dad lived in and worked in Liverpool at that stage during the week. And he got me a shirt. For some reason, I was asking him for this shirt, and he said that we used to watch Match of the Day together. But at that stage, it was I wasn't watching it I was just a kid that watched it while he watched it. And for some reason, I was asking for a Liverpool shirt. Now, all my mates were United fans. Like, I remember having a pencil case when I was sort of 5 years old, and having it in school, and people like trying to write on the pencil case because they were United fans. Like, most people back home are United, I suppose United or Liverpool, but at that time people my age were mostly United because of the success and so on. So my earliest memories are sort of being tortured and tormented by United fans, and sort of having to grow through that. And I know Neil mentioned his first game. My first time watching Liverpool would have been sort of 7 or 8. They used to come to Belfast to play in this tournament every summer. You'd have like some Irish teams, and then you'd have like Benfica and Liverpool, or Feyenoord and Liverpool, which is mad now looking back on it. And so my dad used to take me to that, and then we went to Celtic Park to see them. It was always pre-season games, just because it was difficult to get tickets and stuff. So yeah, my earliest sort of memories was actually watching Liverpool in Belfast, which is very strange. But just sort of being in awe of like the actual footballers that you watched on screen, like that they were there and they weren't the posters on the wall. They weren't they weren't pixelated on Match of the Day. So yeah, that's mine.
So who were the people who were playing in the team at that point?
So it would have been sort of 98, 99. Michael Owen had just broken through. What the funny thing about that was that they used to, after the games in Belfast, they used to fly straight home after the game. But back in those days, the football teams didn't move around. They didn't have like big security taking them through. They didn't go like round another exit. They got the same flight that everyone else would have been getting from Belfast to Liverpool, and so you're able to go through straight into the lounge, and we used to do that after each game and sort of go and meet them. So like I remember, there's a picture of me in Carragher's lap, and like just with all the players. I remember meeting Fowler and I'm eating a Magnum, but I'm still continued to eat the Magnum during the picture. I actually actually ended up, I was in America with Fowler once, in Utah, which is just mad anyway. And we were eating a burrito together, and I said to him, by the way, I got a picture of you when I was like 8 and you just kept eating your Magnum. And he just laughed. There is in the picture with Jamie Carragher, there's Carragher and there's Murphy, and in the background is Steven Gerrard. But Steven Gerrard's kept his head down, and he's continued eating, because we obviously didn't know who he was at that stage. It would have been 98, I'd imagine. So he would have been a youth team player, probably just taken over to be part of the pre-season. So I'm in this picture with Carragher and Danny Murphy's there, and there's Gerrard sitting in the back eating a burger, which is, it was only like 10 years later when I found the pictures, it was like, that's Gerrard in the background.
That's funny.
You should get that picture, put it on the cover for this edition. That'd be,
I've got it. Yeah, I'll send it to you. I've got it somewhere on my phone.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. So moving on then. The Anfield Wrap is a real phenomenon. Going to be the podcast of the year this year, do we think?
If people vote for us, so vote for us.
Done. We've done that. We've shared it around. So
vote again. This is gerrymandering. This isn't democracy. This isn't a meritocracy. This is we very much should anybody ever ask, play by the rules, but take that with a pinch of salt if nobody asks. Someone
who you probably know did say that she had used all her email addresses to vote. So
that's a perfect number of email addresses to use, all of them.
Exactly. Yeah. Maybe we should start thinking about creating new email addresses if you're listening.
Yeah,
that'll be the next move, I think.
Hey, Shannon.
Yeah.
Well, where, do we vote someplace?
It's the go on, Craig.
British Podcast Awards .com or .co.uk. I can't quite remember /vote. Or you can go to the AnfieldWrap.com /vote for Taw.
Okay.
Either or, it'll bring you to the same page.
Yeah. And I'll put the link on the recording after this.
Magic.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Oh, so where did it all start? I confess I don't know this story, but I know you had a weekly podcast, right?
I mean, the story is somewhat, it's like all good stories, it changes with the telling, but ultimately it's Andy Heaton and Gareth Roberts who came up with the idea of doing something that looked and felt a lot like the Anfield Wrap, and this was in 2011. It was off the back of, post Hicks and Gillette era, which had sort of coalesced a lot of Liverpool supporters into at least all being in the same room together at different times. And Gareth was editing Well Read, and Andy had been a founder member of Spirit of Shankly, and they began to meet, and then they spoke to Jim Bollman and Ian Maloney, and then the Anfield Wrap was on the agenda, and Andy asked me to host it a couple of times in the summer of 2011, and we did the first one in the August of 2011. And then from there, it was it was an idea whose sort of time had come. It was just as podcasts were beginning to explode, but the magic ingredient was people all being in the same room. So they invested in getting time and space in Park Street Studio on a Monday, where it had a proper producer. We made sure the sound was right, and that really helped the format, helped the show, and helped it settle down into something. And then John Gibbons came on board after about sort of 10 shows or so. And from there it sort of just grew, and it was always done on a Monday at 11 o'clock, and then Radio City Talk asked us to do a show, which was really important to the way in which it all sort of evolved. So we started to do a radio show, and quite quickly that became live radio, and that was just unbelievably valuable for us. Me and John going to host that at the Tower every Friday live. We did our first live show in Bray in the February of 2013. Which was, 500 people came to Bray, which just never seemed likely or on the cards. And that was, massive for us. And then by about 2015, we had a load of contributors, but we were only doing 2 shows a week. And we had the idea to pursue a Tour Player, which is our subscription service, which does about the 14 shows a week, and now 10 video as well. And we started that in the March of 2015 for free. At first 6 weeks were all for free. But then we kept 2 shows for free and paywalled the rest. From sort of the end of April in 2015. And then from there, we've been sort of just growing and growing. We've got loads of contributors, which is great. You've been over to the office, which is ace. And, it's a good place to be. It's a good place to work. Craig came over from Northern Ireland. He got a job somewhere else. And then he was, he told us one night drunkenly he was looking to move somewhere else. And then we decided that we'd see if we could tempt him to come and join the Anfield Rap full time, and that worked. So that was great. And we've just sort of added, and now we've got sort of 13 full-time staff working out of the city centre, helping us produce all this stuff and everything else that we do around sort of partnerships and working with other bits of the city, to be honest with you, and then looking to go beyond that, tell stories around football, tell stories separate to football, work with people who support other teams, and it's a lot, but it's a good lot, and it's a really, you can't got to firstly be proud of it, but also secondly, it's a good way to spend your working days, and it's a lot of fun. Everyone's good people who we work with and do the shows with, and that's the trite thing to say is that we'd be nothing without the audience, and there's an element that's obviously true, but for us, our contributors are just the absolute lifeblood of what we do. They turn up and they give ever so much of themselves, and now they don't turn up as such, everything's remote at the minute, but they give themselves over, their insight, their time, but just themselves really, because we don't ask anyone to be an expert. You come and do a post-match show with the Anfield Rap, at Anfield. The most important thing is that you've just been in the ground. You don't need to have been to, you don't need to have got your coaching badges or anything like that. You just need to have lived that football match, and that's what we want, and that's what we want to put over. And we sort of pride ourselves on telling the story of supporting Liverpool from the heart of the city. That's what we see ourselves as doing, and it's a good thing to do.
So when did you reach the point where you realized it was kind of a viable, like this is going to be my job?
2015, so around the summer of 2015 was the point where we just had we just committed to the idea that there was something there, and then essentially when we put it behind the paywall, it was £5 a month then, as it went on to be for the following sort of 4 years, but we essentially, like 2,500 people signed up in the first 3 days. And that, straight away gives you a sense that there's cash flow there. There's something that could be something there, and that was hugely important to us. That sort of early adopters in such large numbers was hugely important. And we were still, and we still do, but we were making mistakes around some of that content. It didn't all work. We got shut of some formats early, brought other ones in, but we sort of knew we had a hardcore of people who were there for us, and would be sort of broadly speaking there for us no matter what. So that gave us the feeling that we had something, and then it was a matter of us sort of building it and finding other people to come, join, be part of it, and hopefully convincing other people to also then become sort of hardcore adopters. I think in general, paying for content in this era is still troubling to some people, and I understand that, and we have to sort of work within that, but we think we do give really significant value, to be honest with you. We think the shows tend to be really good. There's obviously always one or two bum ones any given month, but on the whole, I think most of what we put out is really strong, and some of what we put out, I think, is tremendous in all seriousness. So within that, the thing I always say, and we've been having a chat about a few things recently, me and Craig, is what we want is to make sure at least once a week someone's coming away from it thinking, well, that was worth me subscription money this month alone. Yeah. And if you've got one of them every single week, then people feel like, yeah, this is worth doing, and it is worth sort of saying that we couldn't do it. We really couldn't do it if it wasn't for people paying and subscribing, because we've done it the other way, and there really isn't, without sort of stripping it back to a boring business conversation, but there really isn't the sort of partnership or market and spend out there that would allow you to do the Anfield Rap for free. There has to be at some sort of point, I think, an element of commerce for us to do what we're doing now. So it is, and not even what we're doing now, even what we were doing when there was only sort of 5 of us working full time. We still needed that sort of that idea that people were paying for this. But also, I think off the back of that, I think that a financial relationship's actually a good one. It doesn't need to be seen as a bad one, because ultimately we back ourselves that you're paying for this and it's good. You're getting something that is a really, really good thing, and we're proud of that, and we'll keep giving it to people.
Great. I think one of the things that's made a big difference, actually, in terms of thinking about paying for content, is there's a lot of talk here about people cutting the cord. So basically, you buy an app to show your TV channels, and that allows you to be a lot more selective. And if you, hopefully you'll love this, because I did a spreadsheet of all of the things we were spending in terms of content, and like we took away cable, and then I was able to add, then paying for LFC TV or Amazon Prime was like, well, we're going to pay less if we do it this way than if we go use the old model. So I can send you the spreadsheet if you're interested.
I love a spreadsheet. You don't need to worry about that.
I do know that. Yes. Yeah.
Send me a spreadsheet so I can make my own, Paul.
Okay. If anyone wants a spreadsheet, happy to send it to you. So,
yeah, I think the diversity of content is one of the things that I found, as you said, that makes the paywall not feel that bad. Because like if it was like, here, pay us this month for one podcast each week, then you'd be kind of like, well, when there's a bad one, you'd be like, well, that was a waste of money this week, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But the fact that because I've got it just on my phone, so when I go to run on the treadmill, I'll say, which show do I want to listen to today? And just having so many choices, like basically one day a week, I can pick something different, and it can always be something different. So I think that's something you guys really do well.
Yeah, we want to offer that sort of look and feel of, what sort of mood are you in for this? Because there's, as football supporters, we are in different moods. Sometimes we just want to laugh. Sometimes we want something tactical. Sometimes you might want something that's gossipy. But what we want to be able to do is that within reason, anytime any Liverpool supporter, if we've got the Anfield Wrap app, there's something there that sort of falls in and fulfills that need. And I think that's always been our outlook. And sometimes when we sort of talk to customers, they're a bit like, well, why don't you do more of this? And it's like, well, we do a lot of it, but we're not just going to focus in on X. A lot of people are convinced, for instance, that everyone's favourite show is everyone whose favourite show is the review is convinced that the review is everybody's favourite show, which is a thing that we all have, so we've got a hand up there and everyone's convinced. And then we do our marketing thing that John does, and it comes in fourth. Behind some stuff that you'd be actually, at times a little bit surprised by, but that's not to talk the show down. It's just that it's not quite for everyone, and not for everyone every week. And I think that sort of being able to say, well, what is and what we try not to do, and what we're trying harder not to do, because there's a couple of little things we're working on at the minute, is to have a duplication. What we don't want, and it's quite interesting because we've got 3 or 4 different shows that preview the weekend's game, but we want all weekend's games, but we want them to feel like they are different shows. So they'll have different flavours to them. They'll have other stuff going on, and trying to sort of work that out is really important to us, because obviously the games are the lifeblood of football support, and they always will be. You talked at the very start of this podcast about where to watch the games. Games are everything. That's what we're in it for. But therefore, within that, though, how do we tell the story of those games in different ways and give people the option for how they want to do that? And that's the sort of stuff that we maybe talk about at times. It might feel like a little bit too much for some people, but it's that we want to get that right and get that right for for what is also a hugely diverse, with one key thing in common: they support Liverpool Football Club, and hopefully a second thing in common: they've got the interests of the city of Liverpool at heart. But it is a hugely diverse number of people all around the world. Every outlook possible should be in there. There's nothing that should limit that, and so we want to be open to that, and we want to be available for that. So we've got to think, well, how do we cater for all those people?
I think the exciting thing for me is that, and we say it like quite a bit to ourselves, but that like we make our own rules.
Yeah.
So like we've got like a bit of a mission statement that's to share the experience of supporting Liverpool from the heart of the city, and nobody does it better. And so like obviously like one of the values there is like excellence, about making sure that everything is as good as we can possibly do it. But like also, we don't have to. What I'm saying is we can listen to our subscribers, and if our subscribers say to us, which they quite often do, and it's brilliant, they'll text us and say, why don't you do a show about this? Within a day we can have that show done and we can put it out. And that's like a really exciting thing for me, is that we have this like amazing community that they've built from the beginning of the Anfield Wrap until now, that of subscribers that are not just listeners and paying customers. They're advocates, and they want to see it do well, but they also they want to sort of have their input, and they'll you guys will know, like, the subscribers will say to us like, oh, we really, really like this, want more of this, and then we'll be able to do it. We'll be able to do it as quickly as that. We can put it on our own app. We don't have to rely on anyone else, and we don't have anyone above us saying, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do a story that gets this many clicks, you have to, you have to toe this certain line. We don't. We just listen to what our listeners want to hear and try and give them it as much as possible.
You look like you've really kind of, to my mind, stepped up during the lockdown. Like, so you already know that the review is my favorite show, but I've really loved What's Next. Now, I'm if no one's approached you to like even contemplate some of the ideas that you've been putting out there, then somebody is missing a trick. But it kind of really felt like you like this week you put out some kind of you were talking about diversity in a few different contexts. It feels like you've almost taken the moment and taken advantage of it. Is that how it's felt from your end?
Well, what was really interesting, like, and again, it's suddenly, and a lot of this can sound almost, quite structural and quite sort of practical, and it may not be what people necessarily want to hear, but there was something almost quite exciting and a little bit liberating in the fact that the games disappeared. And I don't mean that like it was, it was a huge problem that the games disappeared, and it obviously, with the context of the league stuff. But what it suddenly meant was, it meant that, we were absolutely in the run of the season where it's game, pre-match, post-match. What are you doing next? How's this going to work through? You love the review after that one, review after that one, review after that one. This is it. This is the way this runs. And there was somewhere on the horizon which does become a little bit like, all right, well, where have we got the ideas from, and what have we got, and what's our sort of creative stuff saying? But we suddenly had a couple of really interesting things happen, which is obviously all of that disappears. So what are you going to do? So that's thing one. Thing two is what became really clear to us quite quickly was that we are important to our subscribers and listeners, that it's important that the Anfield Wrap is there, even if they didn't want it when they wanted it. The idea of a sense of that there was the option of normality within the world, this thing that they've grown used to, that they wanted us to be present. And that came over really, really quickly. And we made clear to people that we were going to be. And the third thing that happened was there was something in the liberation of literally what we're doing now, in that, we've been very committed and will continue to be when we can be, to doing our work with people in the same room. I think it matters. I think it's important. And I think it's part of how you enjoy football. That's what we want to put over. We will always want to add to Liverpool supporters' lives. We're meant to be a boost to that. We want to make that better for people. And part of that is having people in the same room, bouncing off one another, making each other laugh. But that disappears for everyone. It disappeared for everyone almost instantaneously when this thing happened. And we went into lockdown a week early because as part of that, we have 60 people come through our studio on a weekly basis. And that didn't feel at all safe all of a sudden. So we just went, right, that's it. We've got to close the doors. And then suddenly it is, well, what are we going to do? Mm-hmm. And everyone stepped up. Everyone stepped up. Contributors had ideas, things that they wanted to do, stuff that they'd been thinking about for a while. Everyone in the team had an idea of something we could do that was different. We're trying to process them, get them formatted, get them sort of scheduled in, when's it going, the recording going to happen, how's it all going to come together. And I'm made up with what we've put out, and a lot of what we've done, we're going to keep. So there's some shows that we've innovated during this period, we're going to keep. We're going to do, even when things return to whatever normal is, we're going to do a little bit more stuff remotely. We're not going to feel as though we can't, which is perhaps how we felt in the past. So if we've just got someone really, really good, but they can basically, for an interview, hypothetically, and they're happy to do an hour and there'll be a great guest, but they can only do it from their house on a Friday night at 10:30. Well, we'll just do it over Zoom on a Friday night at 10:30. And we'll literally make that into a feature, that we've got the option of that. Stuff like we came up with Agony Hour that had been getting kicked around for a month beforehand, but we put that into action pretty quickly. We'll be continuing on with that. We'll revisit. We've parked for now the what's next stuff, but we will revisit it and maybe find a new format for it. So, finding a footy fix, really good. On the spot, loved it. Really enjoy watching it, to be quite honest with you. There's a way to tell the ones I like, and then I'll take myself off them. So I can watch them with other people's on and not feel as though I'm about to turn up in a minute. So I just become somebody who consumes that. I book every Thursday's AFQ for me because John hosts that one. So I'm like, who do I fancy listening to? So you get to see that in there, and so we will continue with some of that. But it was an interesting thing to have happen. Now, don't get me wrong, I do not want it to happen again, and it obviously comes with all the other connotations. But it was interesting, as I say. We will use bits and pieces of what we've learned to add to the offer and make it better. I think not to do that would be daft.
Cool. Sean, do you have any questions?
I was just going to point out, and I was actually on my phone right now trying to find what the date was, but you were on the Zonal Marking podcast at one point over the winter. I believe there was a podcast, I think it was Zonal Marking, with
Michael Cox.
Yeah.
I had Michael Cox on with us. I'm not quite sure if I've done Michael's show. I don't know if that's worked that way, but I've done stuff with Michael. Get on really well with him. He's a nice man.
Okay, yeah. I mean, that was that was great.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and yeah. I mean, I guess just going back and thinking like bigger picture. I know like the other thing I was thinking about is that my job. I know we've kind of done some of the similar things. You kind of take a step back and try to make lemons out of lemonade, or lemonade out of lemons, basically. The situation, and a lot of the stuff, we're going to continue to do. Like we started doing webinars, which we hadn't done previously. We'd only done in-person training, and now we're going to continue to do webinars. And we started a podcast, and we plan to keep doing that. It kind of feels like everybody's doing a podcast these days, which I'm sure makes your job, you always got to kind of stay on top of it, which it seems like you guys have, because there's so much variety and there's so many options. But yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting time, but I think that there have been some good things come out of it. And one of them is that like we're getting to do this talk to you guys today.
Exactly.
We wouldn't have done that previously, and so that part of it is good. People, hopefully people don't lose sight of that there are some good things that are coming out of this.
Yeah, I think I agree on that, and I think that we want to do more of this sort of stuff with other supporters clubs. So get in touch, give Craig a shout, and we'll sort something out, because we were going to come to the States, and for me that was almost the biggest negative. We planned; it was the most committed we've been to a US tour. Normally, when we do the US tours, it's like it's connected with the team. The team come and do pre-season, and we do stuff. Both, we do stuff, live shows. Amongst the live shows, we're doing audio shows, and amongst the audio shows, we're hoping to be able to get ideally Jürgen or something like that. But we never know before the tours start if it will happen. So it's always like the multi-purpose. Whereas this was going to be our first. We'd chosen the timing of it, and we were coming over for 7 days. And in those 7 days, we were doing 6 live shows every single night, not recording anything else, not around. The team weren't around. And we were really looking forward to that. It was going to be something fresh. And me and Craig had a couple of meetings with Gareth and John about shaking the format up to our live shows, which is really good, but thinking we'll do it a little bit differently. And then to lose that was it was just a real shame, because we love getting out in front of people. I'd like to think people think we are open to listening to what they say. And the best way to have that is the live shows. Really good example is, I've for years talked about stripping AFQ back, or getting rid of it altogether. And when I was at my closest to getting rid of it altogether phase, we went to Ireland and we did a live show in Dublin. And on one night, separately, 5 different people had a chat with me and John to tell them. And it was different people. We pointed them out to one another at the end and to tell, it was a live show of 200, and 5 came up and detailed how important AFQ was for them. And they all had different reasons. Some was around mental health, some was around a strange sort of loss of connection with friends when they reach a certain age. And so getting to hear our thing, it really helped them. And so, it was just really interesting. And I sort of said to John after that, well, we're not getting rid of it then, are we? Because the people have spoken. And, I think that stuff matters. And to have lost that really with the US supporters, because that's really important for us, the relationship with, we want to grow in the United States for a variety of reasons, really. But one is that the sort of sports-based conversation that's over there. I actually think the Anfield Wrap works really well in that space. I think that the more sort of analytical stuff that we do works well in that space. But I also think that the United States supporters really manage to identify with the city in a really fascinating way. So on both fronts, I think that there's people out there who, not every Liverpool supporter necessarily would want the Anfield Wrap in their lives, although I'd like to think that's the case, but not necessarily every single one would. But I do think in the United States there's potentially a lot of people there who support Liverpool, for whom the Anfield Wrap could be something really, really good. So we were going out there to do that for the first time, really, to do a tour for that purpose and to spread that word and do radio stuff around it. So to have lost, that's a real shame. So doing this stuff's really important for us, and we do want to speak to as many different people as possible to say, give us a try, see what you think.
I think it was a two-way thing as well with the US tour. Like, one of the things I love about going is, like, we get to bring a bit of Liverpool to wherever we go in the US, but then we get to almost like experience a little bit of what each of the supporters clubs in the US call their home for watching Liverpool. I love the idea that you go into a bar that a sports club, say Delaware, with Catherine Rooney's, or I'm trying to remember what the one in Chicago was last year that we went to, but you walk into it and it's this Liverpool bar, and you get the experience how they consume football, and it's different to us, but it's not really that different to us, because actually what supporters clubs in America from the outside, what I can see them doing is like almost creating like a little bit of Liverpool in this bar, like creating their own Anfield. So for instance, I think I've said to you before, Paul, like I loved after the European Cup final, we were on the bus back from the European Cup final, and that morning I was just spending it on my phone, going through all the Facebook groups that I was in, watching the videos that people were posting, because Chicago or New York, when they're outside and they're stopping the taxis, or Boston, how they just seeing everyone's videos of them celebrating like this thing that we all celebrated together at the same time, but in different time zones and completely different continents. That's really exciting to me. So that's like one of the things that we sort of missed out on. And like Neil said, we were able to choose exactly where we wanted to go. And it's funny because we'd chosen 5 dates. We'd chosen 5 dates, and then Paul, you come into the office and you were like, well, what about us? And I was like, well, can we make it work? And he's like, yeah, we'll make it work. And I think we just sorted the date and we were able to do it. And that's an exciting thing, that we make our own rules. We're able just to go, fuck it, we'll just put another date on. We'll go to Delaware.
Well, I did recall that you said, "Oh, we definitely have to go to Edmonton because they're really good friends with us." And I'm like, "Oh,
we've never been to Canada, and and that was like, and there's a lot of Reds in Canada, and because and we've never been, and the team never goes, because whilst there's not the population density of the United States, etc., and everyone understands it, so everyone's nice about it. But there is a thing where it was like, okay, is there a way? And as part of we were talking about this, it went from being the US tour to the North American tour, because what we realized was, right, we could do Toronto at the start of it then. Yeah. And stuff like that matters, and we're not just limited to that. This was more East Coast, and we were actually talking about doing something in October that was West Coast, and sort of timing this around international breaks. And so it is, that is a massive blow, and it is a real shame because we do enjoy them, and as I say, get in front of people, but also, as Craig says, like that sort of collective imagination. For me, it's really important. Like, if there's one thing I'd say to anyone who's listening to this, if you can manage to afford it and you've never been to Liverpool and Anfield, go. And the reason for that isn't as simple as, as well you support the football team. I think if you go to a place once, then you can always imagine it. And that's where I think, we've got really good kinship with the Anfield. Right? Like, we do our post-match pints, pint in Tier, and we do our post-match pink in the Glenbook. And so people need to go to the Tier in the Glenbook, but you only need to go once because you've been there then. Things don't change that much and you can imagine it. And that's what I want for people, and I think that matters massively. I think if you go to Anfield once, then you can spend the next 5 years watching from afar. That's fine. But you can sort of remember what it was like in that ground, and you can transport yourself back there. And I think, but the flip side of that, though, is, we do think of the places we've been in the US. We do talk about what will they think about that there? What will the Irish think about that? What will the London Reds think? Because, at times we do focus in a great deal on the city, and we're proud to. But, we do want to be able to have something that resonates in a number of different places. So the more of these places we go to, the more we feel as though there is that sense of shared experience, as Craig says.
Awesome. Actually, Charlie is the last of us to be in Liverpool. He was at the United game.
Belter, well in.
Yeah. And he was the guy.
That was incredible.
So James took a video, right, of the Salah goal, which is just awesome.
Yeah.
It's cop end.
Not only the Salah goal, he also happened to swivel back to Mo standing there shirtless as Ali slid into him on his knees. And then, of course, for me, the climactic moment of the entire season was the cops singing, "We're going to win the league." I'll tell you what an amazing experience. I will never, ever forget it.
It's why for me this season, everyone's trying to do the will you be disappointed or anything like that. And you were there, Charlie, but wherever anyone was in the world, whether it was in a supporters club bar, in Delaware or one in Melbourne, like we had that moment against Manchester United where, everybody, I think even the people who were trying to cry it in, even the people who were saying you never know, things can go wrong, the moment when everyone had to say this is happening. For me, it was inarguable after Leicester away. They win the league at Leicester away. that should be the day they fall. They come back from Qatar, Leicester are second, and instead they go and twat them 4-0. And they play brilliant stuff. And, you know, that's what winning the league is. And we had that. We had Leicester on the 26th of December. We had what happened to Manchester City the following night against Wolves, where they dropped points. We have that. We then go and beat Wolves. We beat Sheffield United. We have all of those things that add up. And that's what winning the league is. And that's, you know, when you've got enough of them, that's when they give you the thing. So it will be a shame not to be there, and it will be a shame to socially, when you're talking about, so you're at your gaff and you're socially distanced. And it will be a bit of a shame that there's not everybody you want in there, and it's not that moment in quite the same way. But you've had that moment. You had it for Man United, and you had it for Leicester, and you had it for Aston Villa at the start of the season. You had those moments all together, and I think that's what winning the league is, and you've had them, and we've all had them, and that's why it's phenomenal, and why this team is just, you know, I mean, thank God the 25 points cleared and not 6 as we return. You know,
that's the other part of it. Yeah, if it was closer, you wouldn't feel quite the same way. But I mean, come on, we're running away with it. And I the Leicester game was amazing. I think at that point, I agree. Like I in my head, I felt like we were going to win the league, but you weren't. I agree with Charlie. Like, you weren't comfortable saying it until we beat United that way. You know, that's the point. At least for me, I felt comfortable saying it out loud, because you just had this you know, the creeping in the back of your head that something awful was going to happen, but not with this team. So
I think it's been strange for us. I think you know, before this lockdown period, when I think of Liverpool winning things, like, well, it's never been the league, so it's always cup competitions. And then the way that they've won these cup competitions, so they win the European Cup and they beat Spurs quite convincingly, although there's 75 minutes of torture. But before that, they had to beat Barcelona 4-0 in the greatest comeback you've ever seen.
Yeah.
You know, 2005 in Istanbul, they have to be 3-0 down to then win it. So then, you know, West Ham as well in the FA Cup in 2006 is the Gerrard one, where he has to, you know, score with the last kick of the game, and so it's always felt like through my lifetime of watching Liverpool and seeing Liverpool, you know, win things, that it's been through adversity. And yet there, in general, Klopp's reign, they've had to overcome adversity time and time again. But then it's funny that they get to this season and then they blow everyone out of the water. And so that I suppose that did feel like a strange sort of thing. I had a mate who's a United fan. And he was like, well, you know, now that you're that far ahead, it's not going to feel the same for you. And I was like, mate, there was 2 months there where Liverpool were continually coming from behind. The Leicester game, you know, where it looked as if we were going to draw and drop points, and Milner scores. The Villa game, where with 10 minutes to go, we're 1-0 down. And the best, I remember at that stage, like, I prayed, and I am in no way religious, but I sometimes do this, which feels unfair, when I need a goal from Liverpool. And I remember praying, thinking, just give me one, just a draw will be fine. It's not, and you know, they give me 2, and that's the thing about this Liverpool side, is that, like, there was that month or 2 in November and December where it was just like, you know, even if we were getting beat or we were drawn and looking as if we were going to drop points, they just said, nah, we're going to find a way. And so that's what winning the league is. It's probably taught us all that like winning the league is it's the 38 games over a season. It's not the, you know, it's not the 4 big games in a knockout, or it's not the big cup final that you get at the end that all leans on 90 minutes. It isn't that. It's good. It will be strange. It'll not be the way that I've envisaged it my whole life and sort of longed for it my whole life. But I think we've all sort of come to terms with the fact that it is going to be a bit different than what we thought it'd be. And I think, you know, I think with everything going on and the fact that people were trying to, you know, talk about null and void and talk about it maybe stopping and all of these things, that actually, you know, us winning it and us having to watch it in our gardens with one mate, or having to watch it in your pub, you know, socially distanced and at tables, well, you know, we're going to see Liverpool in the league, so does it matter really in the long run? And I think they'll win it next year, and then it'll be an even bigger party.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Like that.
We really had the rug pulled out from under us here. Not only we were expecting you guys at the end of March, but then we had the what they call NBC mornings,
FanFest,
a big event, FanFest in Philadelphia, which was going to be the weekend of the City game, which at that point could well have been the clincher because that would have taken care of 6 points if we'd knocked them off. And, everything stops. So, yeah, I tell you, we feel a little bit, like, yeah. I don't know whether it was necessarily going to be anticlimactic, but since everything has just stopped, it's just, you're left with this big empty void when you're expecting just celebrations and parties and such a good time for that week or so.
One thing it has done, though, it has given us the chance to look at like the Fabinho goal against Manchester City about 100 times and really kind of, it might have got lost in the season, and 3 months of. I've also seen the Barcelona highlights more times than I'd care to acknowledge.
Highlights, full match. I didn't know highlights here.
Yeah, at least the second half.
So I know we're like running way over time. Just so two things before we're done. We usually go. Did you have a question for us? Maybe we'll go to that, and then we'll wrap up.
Well, I'm just interested in sort of hearing how you guys started and how you've kept it going and how you've grown, because you were asking us about the Anfield Rap story, and like one of the things I sort of like asking sports clubs or learning a bit about them is sort of their history and how they've come about, and just sort of how you've seen Liverpool's support grow during the last 5, 10, and even 15 years.
Wow. So the LFC Delaware predates, I think, all of us. But as I understand it, there were like a handful of people would come out for the average game to our bar, Catherine Rooney's. But as I was saying before we started recording, it was a bar that was shared with other sort of supporters groups. And my first time I went and watched a match there was at the end of the 2013-14 season. It was actually the Crystal Palace game, and there were three other people there apart from me watching that game. And as I remember it, so history has somehow made this game more important than I think it actually was, because I think at the time I remember going thinking, we've blown it, we're not going to win the league. Mm-hmm. And I know people make a lot now of the fact that there were 3 ahead, but I honestly expected more people. The big kind of next increase that we experienced, so that was kind of not an unusual crowd for a especially I think it was a Monday night game. But then when Klopp came in and we made it to the Europa League final, was that 2016? All of a sudden there's like 40 people in the bar, like Liverpool fans watching this game. I was like, where all these people come from? And I think as a consequence of that, we then applied to become an official supporters club, which eventually happened around 2017. But even like the application, we probably had 100 names on our distribution list, and a minority of them would go to most games. I think the big lift has been a combination of just the team becoming the team that they are now, and kind of the official thing. People started to kind of find us on social media. So this is I'm kind of chopping up the story here, but so we're now at 300 people on our mailing list, which is relatively small, because the Hytham from Chicago said they have 4,000 people on their membership list, for example, and Perth has 6,000. But I would say of the 300, we've got about 200 people who are kind of paid up members who are likely to come and watch any given game. And for the last few games before the lockdown, we were getting north of like 60, 70 people in the bar, which, if you think about like 2014 and now, 70, and they're not all the same people. Like it's like people come and go, but it's particularly this year really awesome to experience watching the games in the bar with folks.
It's great.
Anyone else got anything to add? What have I missed? I'm sure I missed something about.
I got to say that during this whole pandemic, Paul has done a lot of work in keeping everyone together, doing a lot of social happy hours and catch ups and that kind of thing. And of course, this podcast and, the koozies, looking for, looking to order some of the face coverings and so on. So, I mean, I'm not sure how much spare time Paul has to put towards this, but he's been doing a huge amount of work to really just adapt to the situation, because obviously, everything we were able to do as a supporters club beforehand has been blown out of the water, and it's just now think outside the box and what can we do to continue this. So good job, Paul.
Yeah.
Thanks, Charlie.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, Paul's put a ton of work into it. And also to put in context, like Delaware, there's less than 1 million people in the whole state. There's like Chicago's, I don't know how many million people, not even including the metro area. So, 300 is a pretty good number for our area. I mean, the city of Wilmington, where we're based, is only about 75,000 people. So
is that the state capital?
No, Dover. Actually, Dover's in the middle. A lot of the U.S. states, not all of them, the capital's in the middle, and sometimes it's like a random city, and that's kind of Dover. But Wilmington's the largest city, and it's only 75,000 people. So compared to Chicago, that's not very big.
Yeah, I was going to say
we would have enjoyed ourselves. Don't you worry.
Oh no, yeah, it's a good time. Yeah.
One of the things that stuck out to me is talking about like how it's like the moments that you take away from you. Like if you've gone to Anfield once, you can remember it for years. And one of the things that I think of this year is, even like for me, the first match I came to was end of last season, Newcastle, I think it was, or Wolves.
Wolves, I think. Yeah.
Wolves, yeah. Whatever the last day of the season was, I just happened by chance to come in and kind of fell in with the whole crowd, and then watching every match there this season. And even from the first games in August through till, whenever we stopped in March, then the crowd growing every week. But some of those ones sticking out, like Boxing Day, the Derby, I remember, was ridiculously like crammed packed. You had to like elbow your way through the crowd and stuff like that. So when we had all those Spurs fans and Arsenal fans and that one Watford guy kind of giving us a little bit of flack, like saying like, "Oh, mate, you're gonna screw this up. You're not gonna win the league." Or when we're going into the whole null and void thing, and people saying you're not gonna win the league. We won the league in December, like you said, and we've been celebrating since then. Whether the league was rendered null and void or not, we still won this league. Absolutely made everyone in the league look silly, and just being able to enjoy that with these guys every week is what it's really all about.
Definitely, it's the communal experiences, isn't it? It's the sort of the shared experiences that you have with the people that loads of them that you've met through just supporting a football club, which is mad and bonkers if you think about it. That there's these little communities started about all over the world just because you have this one common interest. It's a football club in Liverpool. But it's a brilliant thing, I think. And you're right. It's quite often the people that you've watched it with and the people that you've shared those experiences with, the celebrating Mo Salah against United, or the Origi goal in the Champions League, that you remember the night with them rather than the actual goal itself, I think.
Yeah. More often than not, thanks to
yeah, I mean that's a big part of the communal experience as well.
Wait a minute, did they get any promotional considerations? I'm not sure.
No, we're not allowed to talk about Murphy's apparently.
Yeah, they only sell Guinness in our bar, by the way. Just that's why. Apparently, they sell the most Guinness in Delaware, right? The bar that we go to, Catherine Mooney's.
Yeah, do my part.
So there we go.
Good on them.
A large amount of it on St. Patrick's Day, usually, probably.
A fair amount during our game.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
They have a huge St. Patrick's Day thing. They did.
So I'm going to wrap it up by going around, kind of picking on the most interesting Liverpool-related thing you came across this week, and I think there's a lot of stuff to choose from. Because I'll start with on Thursday. Obviously, Liverpool played at Anfield, it turns out, against Blackburn Rovers, and on Friday when we did our happy hour, we kind of watched the 12-minute whatever it is highlights package, and it was very uplifting just in terms of watching them play again. They're looking so good actually. I'm sure they picked the highlights out specifically, but just a wow. I mean, just kind of whet your appetite for what now? 7 days time, because we're recording this on June 14th. 7 days time, they'll be back. So I'm going to go around in the order I can see. You're going to start with Neil. What's the one highlight from this week?
Really enjoyed there was a James Pearce piece in The Athletic around Liverpool got to top the Fair Play League and win the title. And what's in there that's interesting, and there was some stuff in the comments that was just a bit daft where people were saying, well, it wasn't quite like that, but there was used to be a lot of chat that that Liverpool were too nice. Yeah. And part of what was cited around that was, stuff like fair play leagues and all of that sort of stuff. And I may well have, I've always been very much on the point of view of get right on the referee's back early and stay there whilst playing football. And I think actually Liverpool do more of that now. And I think Liverpool do take time out of the game. I think they're not shy around what you sort of gets phrased as dark arts. But the point is that they are, for the fourth consecutive year, going to top that fair play league. Last season, they got 97 points. And this season, they could still break 100 whilst topping it. And I don't think that's an accident. I think that so much of what they do really, really well is based around a sort of sense of discipline of when the ball can be won, where it can be won, when's the right time to make a certain type of tackle. And I think that's something that this team's great at. So that was a really good piece, and it illustrated that quite nicely, but also, like a lot of good writing, it allows you to have a lot of jump off points and think about the side itself and sort of build your own article on top of it in your own mind.
Yeah. I did read a good point. It was a good piece. Had lots. So it talked about Mane being fouled twice as much as Salah in that piece. Am I right?
Wow.
Which I thought was fascinating. It's like,
and that Firmino's given away 118 free kicks across 3 seasons, but has never been booked. Is something that was very interesting indeed, and is definitely part of what Firmino does. Right. But it's as though the referees just think, he's a lovely lad, isn't he? Sound. Look at him, lovely hair, lovely smile. Yeah, and he's a striker.
Wasn't it that Firmino used to be a defensive midfielder when he was a kid, and that's why he's sort of so good at hustle and hurrying and sort of stealing the ball off people. But I bet if he did exactly the same things, but in Fabinho's position, he'd be getting yellow cards all over the shop. But he's a striker. he's up top. He's nowhere near their goal. So just that's a free kick. It's a free kick. It's the big teeth as well, probably. But yeah.
We don't need to be sharing this though, do we? We don't want the referees to be reading this. Like,
No. Let's keep it out of the minds.
Yeah.
But Bobby does give them the occasional opportunity by whipping off his shirt.
That is the only booking. Goal. Sorry, that was that one booking. That's the only one he's had. The one against Stoke. He didn't specify. That's it. That's the only one. So he hasn't actually had one for the fouls. It was for the wonderful whipping off of the shirt.
Yeah. So, Craig, what have you noticed this week?
I mean, the Coutinho stuff over the past 24 hours has been interesting. Less so for sort of how concrete any of the rumours are, but more the debate around it and sort of. I suppose it's looking at the two stances. One, it's like, I definitely have him back. I don't care what he's done. And it makes me sort of think about how we sort of think of footballers and football in general, that we're just so quick to forgive if it's going to benefit the team, that we'll do anything to make the team better. And I'm kind of on that boat in terms of Coutinho. I know he sort of fakes back injuries allegedly, and kicks up a fuss and wants to go and so on. But I mean, I'd still have him back. I'd have him back on a much reduced fee if we can get it, or on loan. I mean, I'd have him back and stick him on the bench and make him work for his way back into the team. Pay cut, the whole heap, that now he's no longer the best footballer. He comes in as probably the 9th, 10th best footballer in the in the squad. And there's something exciting about that. But it was interesting sort of seeing then the other arguments, the other side of it all, where it's like, what he's done, we're much better without him. And then it made me feel sorry for him, because then you think about it, and he leaves at a time when we reach a Champions League final with this brilliant run that Jurgen still talks about, as like, he spoke about it in the interview Neil had with him, the Anfield Rap, where he's like, I loved that run. We didn't win anything, and people say that, it doesn't mean anything because you haven't won anything, but I love those experiences. So Coutinho will have been sat at home watching that happen and thinking, but at least I'm in Barcelona. At least I'm playing for the club that I always wanted. And then it doesn't go very well the next season for him, and he's had to watch us win the European Cup. And then obviously what's happened this season, we're going to win the Premier League, and he's not been involved in it. That must be an awful thing. and it's also, it's also another sort of another reason why if any player was thinking of leaving Liverpool out of this squad, I would just sort of look at what's happened to Coutinho since and think, is the grass always greener?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Cool. Do you think those rumors are real though? Because the one thing I saw was like a tabloid.
Well, it's we don't know.
Yeah.
I think the guy is it someone Palmer. He got the Van Dijk stuff and he got one other one right.
Ooh, okay.
I can't remember who it was. It was the other. So he's got some credence, even if the newspaper that he's working for is a bit shit.
Okay.
But I mean, I don't know. I think the Klopp. It's. I think last summer when there was talk around it, I think we spoke loads about like culture and whether the way that he acted, how that influences the culture that Klopp's built within his side, and whether it disrupts it and so on. I think sort of my opinion, and it's from the outside, I feel like Coutinho's sort of been taught lots of lessons now that he comes back with the tail between his legs, in my opinion, and sort of has to work to get where he was before. And I think there'd be something really interesting in him having to do that.
I asked the question because Charlie and Sean have a very unhealthy dialogue going on our Facebook Messenger group about transfers, and I usually try to ignore most of them, but now you've given some credibility to that one. I'm fearful about what's going to happen next.
I mean, I didn't mean to add any credibility.
Oh no! I'm learning.
Craig has no credibility whatsoever in the field.
I have negative credibility. I just like to kick around rumors, especially
Craig,
when
make
no
sure.
game's being played.
But to be honest, like I'm not into transfer. Like I don't, in terms of like the sort of people talk about the rumors and people going on and reading like I have no interest in that until it's about to be done. Like Timo Werner was boring me because he was constantly coming out until whenever it obviously comes out that he's going to sign for Chelsea, there was a bit of me that was a bit like, oh, thank God that's over. Now we don't have to listen to him, and now we don't have to talk about it either. But Coutinho, I think there's just something about it that I like a nice story that's got a nice ending, and he has the up and then he has the down, and then I just like this idea that he comes back and is brilliant for us again, and yeah.
Good stuff. So what do you got, Charlie? What was the
thing that I mean, it was great to see them Liverpool back in action against Blackburn, but I read this article about what potentially Klopp's next tweak to the team will be. And I mean, that's something that fascinates me, is the fact that he really is just able to adjust things and adapt to new rules, and also adapt to people adapting to the current game plan that he has. And they were talking a lot about either a diamond or a box midfield, and it really just reminded me our absolute wealth of top level midfielders, both those who are in their prime at the moment and those who are up and coming and potentially could be a part of this team in the future. And it was really it was very reassuring that even though maybe we don't have as much backup for the front three that are able to just step in and be right at that level, but there is some really exciting possibilities for what we might be able to do. I mean, Minamino and Keita on Thursday, from what I saw, looked really good. So did some of the kids. I mean, it's been a little while, I guess, since I've read an article and walked away going, man, it doesn't matter if we don't get Werner or whoever else. I trust Klopp and I trust Edwards and I trust them to do what we need to do and make the adjustments that we need to make so that we can continue this dominance in the next season.
Cool. What was the article? Where was the article?
It was at this is Anfield.
Okay.
So sorry for the competitor shout out, guys, but
they're all
very fascinating article.
No, we're mates.
Yeah, we're all mates. Matt's great.
All mates. Good job.
So Tim, what did you see this week?
Well, I'll be a kiss up then and said I enjoyed reading on the Anfield Wrap Gareth Roberts' article that he put out, was it Friday, about our Liverpool being set up for a fall by all this neutral venue nonsense and then pulling it back, basically daring the supporters to get out on the streets when we win the league or when we beat Everton. Just a lot of good historical context for how football fans are regarded by the mainstream. It was lots of good insight. Well done article and very interesting points. Not to be a complete downer, but check it out.
It's really good.
Whole big topic, but it was a good article.
Yeah, it's great.
Sean, last one.
I enjoyed that the club responded to, I guess, a season ticket holder who brought up the topic of Black Lives Matter, and they responded that the slogan is, it's not merely a slogan, but a principle the players and the club as a whole support unequivocally. So that just sort of further emphasized the other statements the clubs have made. The other thing I wanted to make a correction, Neil, it was a Stats Bomb podcast. I couldn't remember what podcast I'd heard, but that was fantastic. So just wanted to say that. But yeah, I enjoyed that.
Good stuff. We'll make other corrections as we go along.
Sure. Plenty of those.
All right. Well, we're going to leave it there. Thanks so much again, Neil, Craig, for joining us. This was absolutely awesome. Great to see you. And maybe sometime in the future we'll do the in-person thing as well.
Next year, definitely.
Next year.
Yeah.
Good stuff.